Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of But I Digress. We're here sharing our thoughts and opinions on the latest in movies and TV while making a few dozen side treks along the way. Once again, I'm joined by my partner in crime, Zeke Springer, aka Zeke the Freak, author, fire starter, and destroyer of tropes. Today we're going to be discussing Sinners, Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan's take on the vampire genre, drenched with blues music. The film has been a major success since its release. 2 weeks as the number one box office grossing film here in America, doing extremely well in the overseas international markets. Trying to see it on IMAX, but you can't. All showings were basically sold out. And now that they've had to clear all the IMAX screens for Thunderbolts, you are just going to have to wait until a window pops up for Warner Brothers to re-release it, which apparently they're going to do. Cinema Score and Rotten Tomatoes ratings are through the roof. Not that we totally pay any attention to them, but that's what some critics rely on and other people in order to gauge whether they're going to see these films or not. But the question is now is how do we feel about the film and just why are people responding to the film in the way that they are? Zeke, you want to chime in on what your thoughts are?
Yeah, I think it's really resonating with people because of the moment that we're in this moment in history. It's a black director telling a black story, but using the horror framework to do it. People are kind of connecting this to Get Out and Jordan Peele, but I don't like that comparison because they're two different movies. They're two different types of horror. Get Out was more of the suspense horror, the
Right.
locked room paranoia horror. This is not that. This I wouldn't even call this horror because it's very genre bending. You had this situation. I think it's a drama. It's a period piece that just happens to have horror elements show up in about I would say the third act of the movie.
Right.
So for people who are trying to compare this to Get Out and what Jordan Peele does, no, that's not the mindset you should have going into seeing this film. It's a drama, it's a character piece where vampires eventually show up.
Right. And there's some people who've also looked and just said, you look at like Dusk Till Dawn, or even we could even take a look at a film like Psycho, where you think that you've got a particular drama that's going one way, and then all of a sudden the switch is flipped, and it
Right.
becomes more of a psychological thriller. Whereas yeah, and you've already said it in terms of you're looking at a period piece, you're looking at folks who are two brothers coming back and deciding to not necessarily quote unquote put on a show, but create a business where like their folks,
For
people in their
themselves.
community can enjoy themselves and
Right.
and breathe, and have a dance,
Right.
have some liquor and enjoy some music.
Which is
uh
what happened during the Jim Crow South. Black
right.
people opened up juke joints so that they could get away from
The sharecropping and
their sharecropping.
hmm
Just Mr. Charlie
hmm
acting a fool, trying to come down on them,
right.
and just the everyday oppression. The juke joint was a way to get away. You either got away to the church or you got away to the juke joint, one or the other.
That's true. That's true. And in some cases, you did both.
And they did both. Exactly. Because a lot of people partied at the juke joint on Saturday
hmm
night, and they showed up to church on Sunday morning.
Indeed. How they did it, I have no
I have
idea.
no idea either.
This is something where we can say we are not our ancestors.
Mm.
Yes, because at a certain point, if you're at the club too long, there's just no way you can't pull yourself out
Yes,
of bed
yes, can't do it.
in order to give thanks and praise. So, but going back to what you just talked about, I think also there is a point where we can't even talk about fatigue, comic book fatigue. I think there was something here. It was something different. Even with the trailers, and it didn't necessarily give you the impression that all of this, that there were vampires involved, but nonetheless, you saw the images, you saw the music, you saw the fire, you see
Mhm.
like the machine gun going off in Michael B. Jordan's hands. It's like, what is this? So at the very least, it's really compelled people to see that, just
Right,
out of
right,
basic curiosity,
right. And
you
it,
know.
it gave people what they've been demanding for the last few years. You mentioned sequel fatigue. It gave people an original movie
Right,
that's it's an original blockbuster, not
right.
an original quiet piece, not an original like small
Hmm.
independent piece. It was an original blockbuster, not tied to any sequel, not tied to any other IP. This was whole cloth from Ryan Coogler's mind, and people were clamoring for that. Although sometimes when that happens, people don't go and don't support it. Like going back to the movie with Pacific Rim. When
Hmm.
Pacific Rim came out, not a lot of people went to see Pacific Rim, but it
Right.
was original. It was new. It was something different,
Hmm.
and it was like, yeah, no, no. And then all of a sudden, people saw it, I guess, on Blu-ray and DVD and on cable. It's like, oh, okay. And then they went to see the weak
the,
Pacific
the
Rim 2.
yeah, the
And
sequel.
it's just like, it's
Hmm.
too late now.
Right, right. I mean, you could look at another film like Tom Cruise's Edge of Tomorrow.
Yes.
That's another one where you're dealing with with an original concept. And yeah, I mean, some folks like, slept on it, but
Yep.
once it makes its way to, like streaming DVD or cable or what have you, people are just like, well, damn, I feel
Oh,
cheated.
I should
And
have seen that on the big screen. Yeah, you
mhm,
should have.
exactly. And I also think just in before hitting this, uh, Coogler has been on the rise. He's had a very good streak. So
Yep.
I think, and also maybe with the exception of Creed 2, and well, I was going to say he's done nothing but original works, but you've got Creed 2, and then you've got Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda
Both of
Forever,
those were
right.
sequels,
Mm-hmm.
but both of those were based on films that he
He
had come up
done.
with original scripts
Right.
for and things like
Yep.
that. So in some ways, and I'm not necessarily comparing him to Christopher Nolan, I think he's become another one of those directors where, you've got folks who are just like, oh, Coogler's got a new film out, aka like Jordan Peele's got
Right.
a new film out.
Right.
Oh, Christopher Nolan's got a new film out. So, let's go take a look at, let's go take a look at this. I think that he's got that
Yes.
um
Yep.
he's got that aura about him now where people is like, you see his name, and also, I would say the one-two punch of Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan
Yep.
is enough now to sort of like pull people in and just sort of like, yeah, I'm down to check this out.
Right. Right.
So,
People trust them now.
yeah,
People completely trust them, and Warner Brothers trusted him. That's for sure.
right.
And Warner Brothers cut that deal with him,
Hmm.
which was a very interesting deal. If people don't know, he got a percentage. He got a percentage of the gross,
Yeah,
not the
for I think
net.
first dollar.
Yeah,
So,
first dollars, and the rights to the film revert back to him in 25 years.
mm,
So this is his movie that Warner Brothers is just kind of holding, and people don't get that deal. So much so that the whole, and I guess we can talk about, if you want to talk about the variety scandal.
yes. Hmm.
Um, what Variety did was kind of foul. I don't know who they were running cover for. Not sure if they were running cover for the other studios, or if
Hmm.
it was somebody within Warner Brothers who was just like, "Oh, okay, now everybody's gonna ask us for this deal."
Hmm.
But Variety was clearly running cover to try and downplay the box office that Sinners made in its
Right.
first week. saying that, oh, it made that, but it probably won't make any more. And week
And
two, it had one of the greatest week twos in box office movie
yeah,
history.
we're talking about less than 6% drop
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
You know,
I've heard 4.8% at one point, but I've
hmm
also heard 6%.
but either way, I
Either
mean,
way,
looking at
yeah.
something that's, even under 25% would
Yeah,
be
it's
phenomenal.
it's phenomenal, yeah.
So I think that's one thing, and we can talk about sort of like what could be the staying power for this film, but I think one, black folks made it their mission to
Yes.
go see this film, and I think the Variety article also touched off on something, and a lot of folks are just sort of like, okay, you know what? It seems like the knives are out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, if I'll see it twice, you can talk about word of mouth. Yeah, you got to go see this film. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, or you start grabbing people and just sort of like, okay, we're gonna go see. We're all gonna go see
See
this
it
film.
again. Yeah, I plan on seeing it a second time. I
Yeah,
wanted to see it a second time in IMAX, but all the IMAX shows were either terrible seats
hmm
or it's sold out.
yeah. I was telling my trainer, it was like, yeah, the only seats that were left were the wheelchair seats.
Yeah.
And I was just sort of like, you have to wonder, is like, is it really worth, hey, maybe you just get there and you just stand, and just watch it. But this is a phenomenon now. I don't know. Obviously, it's got serious competition with Thunderbolts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is the start of the summer movie season, and I'm sure like the calendar is going to get very crowded, really quick, because I think we've got Mission Impossible, we've got
Yep.
probably about like two or three other films that are going to round out the month of May, but nonetheless, I think they're tracking Cinders to finish about like 300 or 400
Yep.
worldwide, and I think that's nothing to that that ain't
Nothing.
hay.
Yes. No, it's not.
So,
Nothing. Nothing to cast off at. So yeah.
mhm. Yeah, I think I think again you've got something here, and just the other thing is that this is a rated R film.
Mm-hmm.
You have got something where obviously you've got quote unquote gore, you've got a little bit of sex, and not necessarily in the you're not really showing flesh, but you're seeing a bit of action.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's that. But nonetheless, I think there's enough there where folks are just sort of like, okay, you know what, this is titillating. There's enough to keep my I wouldn't say just to keep my interest, but again, we're children of the 70s, the 80s, and the
Mm-hmm.
90s. So we've had like our Lost Boys.
Right.
Um, we may have been too young for Dracula with Frank Langella.
Right. I was just thinking that.
So, but and we're definitely too young to be watching like The Hunger, with David Bowie and Catherine
Oh, I,
Deneuve.
I I did see The Hunger in the theaters.
Oh wow, damn son. Okay, I had to wait for cable and for mom to be
I think I
asleep.
was in high school. I think I was
Okay.
in high school when The Hunger came out. So
hmm
yeah, I saw it.
So, but yeah, but it seems that the vampire genre, we had the Lost Boys, we had Near Dark, and then things keep going, and then when we get into what was around in the '90s. Oh well, you had Blade,
Blade.
and then you have Underworld, like
Mm-hmm.
the Underworld films. But it seems that this could actually resonate for folks who of the 20s now have something that they can look at and just sort of
Right.
like, oh, this is
Exactly.
something.
Yeah. This is my vampire film.
Yeah. So yeah, and then having it infused with blues music,
Yes.
which I think overall we're probably going to be looking at, probably like a culturally like a blues revival. Uh,
I would like to see that. I would definitely like to see that.
yeah, I
'Cause,
think that. Yeah, I think so, and it's one of those things where, hey, this could be culturally. We'll probably have like a great soundtrack. We
mm-hmm.
do have a great soundtrack with the
Oh
film
yeah, yeah, we
that
do.
people are going to go out and buy,
Yeah.
and
It's
then
from what I understand, it's doing really well on Spotify.
okay, All right, well that's good. I mean, look, they need to. I'm not saying they need to start pressing some CDs, but or just making it as like MP3s or something like that,
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
think folks want this may be something that folks want to hold on to,
Right, exactly.
and then
And
hopefully
no, no, go ahead.
yeah, and then hopefully like the old heads will just sort of like, oh, you're listening to this is like,
Then
well,
check
here's
this
like
out.
Buddy Guy, here's Albert
Hmm.
Collins, here's John Lee Hooker, here's
Yep.
such and such and such and such, and who knows, man, maybe you may start seeing like if not folks pick up instruments, record labels start looking at just like film studios. Well, who do we have?
Yeah,
What do
yeah,
we have?
yeah.
That
What do
we
we
can
have?
yeah, that we can market to folks and stuff. So, this is not necessarily a bad thing in that
Right.
regard.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Hmm.
And like you said, the music was great. The soundtrack was great. Uh, who was it? Gormanson.
Yeah.
He just nailed it. He's been nailing it a lot lately.
Yeah,
Uh,
he has not missed. I think that, you know, and we can go back because I was thinking about when he did Creed and some of the music that he used for like the training montage. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're not necessarily you're not cribbing from Rocky, but you are in some ways taking the musical influences,
right.
using
Right.
trumpets,
Right.
using like snare drums and things like
And
that, and
making
just and
something new. Yeah.
mhm, definitely.
That's what
So
he does here, and music becomes, and everybody's saying it, music becomes its own character in this film.
yeah,
I mean, it's a thing. It primes you. It gets you going. It puts you on edge. It eases
mhm,
you. So yeah, he's working magic with his score in this film,
yeah,
and
definitely.
Miles Caton singing, and who was it? Jamie, I forget her name, who played Pearline. Their
Yes,
singing is outstanding. Miles Caton, that guy, I had never heard of him before
right.
this film, and he's just a find. He is just
Hmm.
a discovery. That guy. I'm like, where was this guy? But I understand he's a singer,
Hmm.
songwriter, musician, and that was him playing guitar. I think he usually plays the piano, but
Okay.
I think he had to. I think he knew how to play the guitar, but
Hmm.
wasn't proficient. And then he had to get proficient for this role. And apparently, that is him playing the guitar in this movie.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, hey, nothing like, taking 6 or 7 hours out of your day to learn an instrument and then to
Hmm.
learn a genre of music, specifically for like the film that you're going to be in. And I'm trying to remember, I may have caught this like, reading, I think it was maybe like SZA or someone else who had stated that had told Miles, he's like, you need to audition for this film.
Oh wow!
So if that's the case, I'll look it up, and if folks want to get at me in the comments after we post a video, I'll find the link and see about including it, with the video. So but interesting tidbit. It's just if the fire is there and someone hands you a torch, an opportunity to light your torch,
Do it.
then you jump on it.
Definitely
You
jump
definitely
on it.
jump on it.
I mean, I see some stardom for that guy now, and
Hmm.
keeping with the music, the famous scene that everybody's talking about, the
Hmm.
musical number in the middle, not the stomp, but Preacher Boy's performance at the
Yes.
juke joint. I
Hmm.
I I I was taken away by that.
Yeah, I was
Very
definitely moved by that.
Yeah, I was totally moved by that. And there's things in film that move me where I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm in. And
Hmm.
it was that scene when Christopher Reeve flies for the first time in the first Superman. That
Right.
took me away. And
Hmm.
then Batman, the first Batman, 1989, when you see the Batmobile driving through the streets of Gotham for the first time. It was
Okay.
just like, wow, okay,
Hmm.
yes. And of course, there's other scenes that move me. But yeah, that moved me, and we can spoil it, I guess, a little bit. Are we doing spoilers?
We can do, I would say spoiler, not so spoiler.
Okay.
If that's a thing. I mean, we can allude to certain things, but there's no need to, like, give the whole thing away.
Right, right. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'll just say that when the music was moving through time,
Hmm.
uh, my immediate thought was like, okay, they're going for it,
Hmm.
but if they don't handle this scene right, because I know where they're going with this,
Hmm.
this could look really stupid and corny.
Right.
And no, they nailed it. They
Yeah.
nailed it.
Yeah. They not only did they nailed it, and they also reined it in. This was
Yes,
very, it was
yes,
very, very controlled. I mean, you could see things and get the gist, especially when we got to sort of like modern dance.
right,
And then it was just sort of like, yeah, this is, I'm not saying to keep it classy, but it gave you what you needed to know. And then even going backwards in terms of the African
right.
influences, and
Mm-hmm.
seeing that there, and and then also the Asian influences as well.
Yep.
You're just sort of like, okay, wow, this is something special, and hadn't realized that this was all done sort of like in one take.
In one take, yeah. That
You
was
know,
amazing. I think they said they rehearsed for like what was it, 6 weeks or something like that.
okay,
They rehearsed for a very long time, and then when they were ready to go, it was boom, one take.
okay, cool. Now, I say this because Michelle and I, we've been watching Adolescence on Netflix, and after seeing episode one, I was like, wait a minute. I had no, outside of knowing what the story was, I had no idea in terms of what the technical aspects were. And immediately it was just like about 5 minutes in, it's like, wait a minute, this is all one take. And
Mm-hmm.
then you
Yeah,
find out that
yeah, I
each
heard about
episode
that.
is basically doing that. So, you know, I think you can look at some things that are gimmicks, and you can also look at people are actually just sort of like moving forward, and
Hmm.
especially with digital cameras.
Right,
All you
right,
really need is sort of like a hard drive,
right.
and you can, if you got a camera with no true like moving parts, then you can just
Yeah,
definitely
you can
just
just
you
keep
can do
going.
things like this. You
Exactly,
can stretch,
exactly. Even
you can
though he
stretch the
shot this
medium.
on film, though, he shot
Hmm.
this on film.
Okay.
Do you watch the show on Apple, the studio with Seth Rogen?
No.
It's very funny, and there's
Hmm.
an episode called The Oneer, and
Okay.
he goes to a film shoot
Hmm.
where they're trying this particular day they're trying to do a one shot
Okay.
scene,
All right.
and
Oh,
they're doing that, and as they're doing that, you realize the episode itself
is
is
a
is a one.
okay. All right. Cool. I and you know I think Apple TV is really hitting its stride,
It
uh,
is.
because I think, was I watching? Wait, um, people have been telling me about like Your Friends and Neighbors. There've been a few other shows that are on there that have been good, and
I
you know
love
I
shrinking.
okay, yeah, you
Shrinking's
talked
great.
about that with
Yeah,
Harrison Ford,
yeah.
and then getting in with like Ted Lasso, like
Hmm.
a couple of years ago. That's been good. There's plenty of good television out there,
Yes,
and
yes, there is.
I'm glad that well, you can't even say it's like, well, I'm glad that we're sort of like resting, quote unquote, the power and creativity from the legacy networks, but at the same time, it's just like even they're creating good television.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
at least now they're trying.
right.
They're
That's
trying.
true. Definitely.
I don't know if is there anything on network television that I watch regularly?
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know if there is.
with here,
Unfortunately.
yeah, here in the Owuku Tatum household, it's still sort of like the medical shows,
Mm,
and then it's Chicago Fire and Chicago Med. Michelle's got Grey's Anatomy.
mm.
The girls love 911. So they don't. Yeah, so they really love like 911. So
Oh, okay.
that's there. And then my youngest Molly, she's with the Simpsons.
Right.
So we've been going back and forth and going in and around, whether like new seasons, past seasons. I think there's sort of like a wall where it's like she really doesn't want to watch the early stuff. She's like, why are they drawn like that? Everything looks ugly. And I'm just was like, listen, this is back when it was hand drawn.
Yeah, when he
And
was hand
so,
drawn, exactly.
but yeah, I think that's where we are. And then once the girls are asleep, then I've got like Andor on,
Hmm.
Fallout and all the other
Right,
all the
right.
other shows. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I
that. But
think as far as network television, once the Arrowverse on the CW fell
mhm.
apart, I was done. I'm
Okay.
almost exclusively streaming now.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can't think of a network show that I watch on a regular basis. I don't
Okay.
know.
I feel you. Yeah, I feel you. So, hey, but I digress, or we
Yes,
digress.
we digress.
So, but yeah, let's get back to Sinners, and we were looking at sort of the technical aspects, but I also want to go back, segueing from technical to promotion. I thought that it was a masterstroke that part of the film's marketing was having Ryan Coogler do that video for Kodak and
Oh
doing it
yeah, I
for in
still
regards
haven't
to
seen it. I've
IMAX.
only seen clips of that. Yeah, genius.
Hmm.
And now that video has gone viral, and you've got like film school nerds who are who are studying at the feed at that video now.
Yeah, but I think it's a great thing. And you know what? You see sort of like Christopher Nolan do something, similar when it's sort of like the behind the scenes footage for a lot of his films.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but this is just sort of someone, who is sort of taken up as like, yeah, you need to see this in the theater. We've got this in multiple aspect ratios. What are aspect ratios?
Mm-hmm.
And
Break it
goes
down.
into it and then
Hmm.
talks about the communal experience of seeing something in the theater. And you're just sort of like, okay, you know what? This is a man who I'm pretty sure after all of the premieres and stuff like that will probably go see a flick with his bucket of popcorn, and
Oh,
stuff, and will sit, yeah,
he's a
you
true
know.
cinephile. He is a true
Hmm.
cinephile. That's one of the things I really like about him. He appreciates film. He's just not in this to make a buck. He
Right.
he's in it to make a really good movie, and he's also in it to see really good movies made.
Hmm.
I mean, not a lot of people in Hollywood are in that mindset.
No, it's just, can we crank out
Yeah,
what we think audiences
will
need?
will need will want, and
Right.
it's like sometimes you just have to do what's that, um sing like sing as if nobody's listening,
Right.
and then there's another one that I heard the other day, write as if nobody's going to read what you're writing.
Hmm.
Just do it, just do it.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
that's that's just write, just make a film, just go out there. You got your phones. This my pigeon with a
Hmm. I
boat,
see.
paper boat on his head. Just take your phones out there and make something.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I have a YouTube video of on my channel where I do a whole episode where I talk about stop complaining about what Disney's not doing, what
Hmm.
Warner Brothers is doing wrong, what Marvel Studios is doing or not doing, and
Right.
go out there and do your thing.
And there are
Do your thing.
plenty of fan films that are out there,
Yes.
based on, existing IPs where they're, whether they're doing it, via, CGI characters, or whether folks are just sort of like, putting on costumes and
Mm-hmm.
getting stuff
Yeah.
done, and,
Yeah.
and making like, 5, 10, 15 minute shorts
Right.
that are able to
Right.
tell a story,
There are
it's just,
guys on the internet I can't stand, and they are trying to do their thing. Now, their
hmm
stuff has turned out to be garbage, kind of, and like what's his name, Critical Drinker. He made that what was supposed to be a movie, and
Mm-hmm.
then it would turn into a short film, and then it
Mm-hmm.
turned into proof of concept for a TV show. And then when you see it, it's not good at all. And
Okay.
now he's doing videos where he's throwing people under the bus. And
No, really.
but even still, even he was like he got fed up with Hollywood, and he made something. Like I
Right.
said, not good, but he
Right.
made something.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about it.
It's true. It's true. Let it stand, or you learn from your
Right.
you
You
learn
learn
from
from
your
it.
your mistakes and do better next time.
Mm-hmm.
So, no worries there. But again, going back to Coogler, I don't find any fault in his direction. I do have a couple of issues in regards to sort of like the pacing.
Yeah.
And I felt that, especially when we get to the climax, uh, there was a point where things tended to linger, but then all of a sudden it was just stuff just accelerated. I'm like, wait a minute, there's six of us inside, there's 40 folks outside, but we gonna open the doors and just
And
and
it's
just
on.
yeah, exactly. And I was just sort of like, okay, wait a minute. Usually in flicks like this, and especially you go back to like the Dawn of the Dead's, the 28 days later, you're under siege for a stretch.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you've got people
A
kind of
Quiet
like
Place.
sitting back,
Mm-hmm.
ruminating on things,
Right.
ruminating on their lives and where they went wrong and what they might miss and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And you really didn't get that when they were now, under siege within the juke joint.
Mm-hmm. And that
It's
that that the Asian shopkeeper, she was just committed. She was just this was sort of like, once they had mentioned that her daughter was was at risk,
yes,
he
yes.
was just like, what? He was just like, wait a minute, she started calling people out.
There are knuckleheads on the internet, as there will be,
Mm-hmm.
who complain about what the woman Grace
Mm-hmm.
does, her decision to do what she did, and I'm like, I had to tell these people she had three choices, all of
Mm-hmm.
them bad,
Right.
and the best choice she had was
Mm-hmm.
the one she made. That was
Right.
literally the best choice.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one stupid guy on this comments thread saying Coogler could have written that better, could have written a better solution. Where? Wait, what? How?
Mm-hmm.
How?
Right.
Tell me. And I
Right.
said that, tell me, and haven't gotten a response.
Yeah, I think could you wait it out? Could you? Yeah, I'm just
Well, that's
when is.
that's the one they could have waited it out.
Mm-hmm.
They could have made a run for it, or you take them on
Right.
and see where the see where the cards lie.
Exactly.
Those
Exactly.
were the only three. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they were all Sophie choices. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, they were all Sophie choices. And who want if you wait them out, then they know to get your family members. Now, were they lying about getting family
Mm-hmm.
members? Who knows? But you're gonna trust that? That's your family.
Right. Exactly. All of a sudden it becomes like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Exactly.
They just
Exactly.
show up and it's like, gotcha.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was I thought that was interesting. But the key thing was that, yeah, things just ramped up really
Very
quickly,
fast. Very fast.
very fast. And actually, my other sort of, I wouldn't even call it a pet peeve. That the thing that I just found a bit sort of off-putting was, I felt that there were moments where the music was a bit, it overshadowed the dialogue. There were like musical numbers, and there was a bit of exposition within those numbers.
Hmm.
I'm just sort of like, okay, this is where the volume needs to be lowered a bit, or this
Right.
is the point where we need to move away from lyrics and people need to just start humming in
Right.
order to in order for me to hear things. And then I also felt that there were points where there was just exposition, where all you got was exposition, where I would have preferred there have been like a bit more music. But that's, I would say that's sort of like me kind of like nitpicking, because I my thing was that, and this is this speaks to quote unquote, like the chief villain. I wanted to know more about him.
Yes, I did too. That's my pet peeve with this film. That I
Hmm.
wanted to know more about the character Remick. I mean, he kind of comes in out of nowhere.
Mm,
Um, we see him being chased by the Choctaw natives. That's how we see it. We see him actually like jumping down into frame, and it's like, what is he jumping down from?
yeah,
He's he's
exactly.
he's, he's on fire basically, and it's just like he kind of just falls down from the sky. So maybe Coogler was trying to do a Lucifer reference,
Right.
fallen angel,
Hmm.
um, maybe. But yeah, I wanted more. Although I like that we got into his Irish ethnicity, and
Hmm.
we get into. So it's like, yeah, the Irish, they faced a lot of oppression too,
Right.
and he tried to play on that. But and they get into. I like that they got into the Irishness of Remick, but I
Hmm.
wanted to know more about him.
Exactly.
All he
Exactly.
gave us was that, oh, oh, you think you're gonna fall back on your religion. Oh, but basically it's like that's not even your religion. It was forced on you, and
Hmm.
yeah,
Just it was
it was
forced on.
yeah, and it was forced on us too.
Hmm.
And it was just like, okay, okay, give me more, give
Yeah,
me
give me
more.
more. And and unfortunately we didn't get it.
Yeah, we didn't get it.
And it's okay. It's my hope that should we get a director's cut, we will get we'll get things like that. We'll
Hmm.
get a little bit more in there, and I think that would be. I think the film would have been better served, for it. Uh, and I think that for me, and this goes towards the end of the film, the post-credit scene, in my opinion, should have been that should have been the end of the film.
I agree.
I
Yeah,
felt that
it didn't need to be a mid credit stinger. It didn't need to.
right.
I mean,
You,
I guess he's thinking along the lines of Marvel. Marvel now has conditioned us to wait through the credits or wait till the end of the credits to see if something's there. And folks, most films, it's not there. There's nothing
right.
there. And this
Right.
this this didn't need to be a mid credit stinger.
No. No. And given and given what that given what we got, I thought was interesting because it answers a question, answers a couple of questions, and then it also looks at how we view, um, I won't say immortality, but having be able to live, for have being able to live a long life,
Right.
but you're just sort of like consumed by your needs, whereas somebody else can live a shorter life,
Right.
compared to yours, and be able to experience like all the joys and things
Right,
like that.
exactly,
And you
exactly.
see just where there's a level of lament.
Right,
There was
right,
a definite there was an admission by both characters that that one had missed what was, and then also just sort of like when he asks, it's like, didn't you feel free, at that point it was sort of like, okay, you know so.
it's just like I feel free now.
So, but yeah, I think that was it. I think technically, uh, looking at the cinematography, how everything was, you were able to. There were a lot of visual cues in there,
Right.
without like
Yes.
relying on. There was a lot of, I would say, sort of like film language. When you go into the town in Mississippi, how the camera moves,
Yes.
and you don't necessarily see colored people only, or we don't see you don't see the obvious forms, the obvious signs that we associate with segregation,
Right.
but nonetheless the way the camera works and where people are positioned, you can figure out at the end
Right.
of that scene, just sort of like, okay, this town is more or less divided along
Right.
racial lines.
Yes, exactly. And you get the Asian family being able to navigate both. And they
Right.
and they use a oneer
Mm-hmm.
in that moment when he need when I think it was it who was it Smoke
Mm-hmm.
needed to talk to Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Grace comes from the one store to the second store, and
Right.
it's a one shot the
Mm-hmm.
whole time, and it shows you if you're paying attention to the sides. Grace is in the center of the screen the
Mm-hmm.
whole time, but if you're
Right.
looking to Grace's left and you look to Grace's right, you see
Mm.
Mississippi 1932 in a nutshell. And
Yeah.
I thought that shot I thought was genius, was just pure brilliance.
Yeah. I thought so too. And then also with I was talking to a friend of mine, and he talked about sort of, well, I wanted to learn more about, Smoke and Stacks. And I said, okay, there were more there were visual clues towards the end where you already had yeah, they were twins, but at the same time you really got a better idea of what their bond was
Hmm.
when when I think Smoke goes to the trunk and you see the helmets, you see the military weapons, you see the dog tags, and you're just sort of like, okay, yeah, they both served in World War I. More than likely, they were probably in the same unit. And then they probably, since this was trench warfare, they probably needed to do whatever they had to do in order to ensure that they both survived.
Right, exactly. And you even get like a little sense of that I think it was Stack. He suffers a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
PSTD,
Mm-hmm.
because his hand shakes and he can't. He never rolls his own cigarette
That's
in
right.
the movie
Mm-hmm.
until the end.
Right.
And he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do a good job of it, but
No.
he manages to roll. It was always Stack rolling his cigarettes for him.
Right.
So yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was Smoke with the PTSD,
PTSD. Yeah. That's a
and
good catch.
yeah,
That's a
and
good
he's
catch.
just like the whole every time when they're outside near the truck,
Mm-hmm.
handshaking. Inside the club, his handshaking. He
Mm-hmm.
rolls him a cigarette, and at the end, now he has to roll his
His
own
own.
cigarette,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like, and he works through
Yeah,
it.
that's true. That's true.
And I
Um,
really like that about how they depicted how Michael B. Jordan depicted the twins.
mhm.
This could have devolved into the typical trope of, oh, one twin is bad, one twin good, or one twin is calm and one twin is crazy. One
Right.
twin was a little bit more hot-headed than the other,
Mhm.
but it was just done so subtly that it's like, here's the trope, and
Mhm.
then let's take the trope and dial it back. And
Indeed.
it's like genius. And after a while, almost immediately, I totally forget that it's Michael B. Jordan playing two
Playing two
dual
roles.
roles. I
Mhm.
mean, people are calling this is like, oh, this was a great movie with Michael B. Jordan and Michael C. Jordan.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, I mean, he nailed both characters really well without it being, uh,
Heavy-handed or
heavy-handed.
ham-fisted.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, um, that was definitely good. I thought everyone else was in the film, especially one me who plays
Yeah,
Annie.
one me Musaku.
Yes, I thought that she was excellent and had a great
Yeah,
presence.
amazing. Amazing. Well,
Throughout.
she's always good.
Mhm.
There's that film she made, um, I, th- with the guy with Matt Smith, and
Mhm.
who played her husband in it? What's that film where they play African refugees resettled in the UK?
Right. I think they were originally from like South Africa, and
Yes.
then they moved and wasn't like the house haunted or something like that.
Yes,
Okay.
the house is becomes haunted, and
Mm.
let me see. I want to know what that movie is. I mean, she's always good. I've loved her in everything she's been in. Oh, not his house. What is it? I will find it. No, not we own this city. Is it his house? I think it is his house. Is it his house? Yes, his house. And the
Okay.
husband is who's the husband? Sope Derisu.
Oh, who's on?
I recognize him. I recognize
Yeah,
him.
Gangs of London.
Yes, yes, he's from Gangs of
Mm,
London. Yes, yeah, she's fantastic in that. And I keep telling people to, if you can find it on Max, go watch Lovecraft Country. She's
yes.
outstanding in Lovecraft Country as the woman who
Hmm.
finds the magic to transform herself into a white woman. Amazing, amazing. It's so good. It's so good. And it's a different actress who plays the white woman, but the two
Hmm.
of them are just so great, and just her whole mindset of switching over to in the process of switching over to a white woman and having been a white woman,
Right.
she acts that very well. And in this, it was great to see a leading woman who's not some skinny mini. She's a
She's thick.
real world,
Hmm.
full bodied woman,
Yes.
and she's seen sexually too.
Hmm.
And you know, there's knuckleheads again on the internet, like, oh, why is it's got to be a big black lady? Because they're real people, then,
Yes.
and they deserve our love and affection as well.
Hmm. It's yeah, not only yeah, I would say love and affection, and they also deserve their space in terms of where they fit in terms of the action as well. She was a
Right.
person, thanks to her intuitions and her
Right,
dealings, and I won't say
exactly,
magic,
exactly.
but she was able
And
to
her
gear.
hoodoo.
Yes, exactly. She was able to gear folks up.
And
She.
I like that because they weren't going to do too much in changing the vampire lore in this.
Hmm.
So is this a world where it was a world where vampires existed, but the vast majority of people didn't know about vampires, or I guess believed in them? She gave them a really quick primer. These are
Right.
probably what are known as vampires. Here's how you fight them. Because we spent a lot of time building up these characters. We now need to get to
Yeah.
how to
Let's see
deal
what.
with them.
Right. How to deal with it and quickly.
And quickly, exactly,
Hmm.
which they didn't have time to train, or
Right. We no montage.
yeah, no montage. It was like, here's what it is, here's how you deal with them. And I love the garlic scene. The garlic scene was amazing
Hmm.
because they're clearly harkening back to John Carpenter's The
The
Thing
thing.
with that scene. And
Hmm.
I loved every second of it. And Delroy Lindo mugging it up for the
Hmm.
is just brilliant. I could watch that for days.
True. True.
And I hope that he, along with Michael B. Jordan and maybe Wanmu Mosaku also, get some Oscar nominations out of this, because they definitely I feel they deserve it.
I think that the success of this film is going to definitely put them in conversations. I mean, you could also look at Coogler for best director.
Best
I mean,
director.
even if the film tops out at like 300-400 million dollars, you take a look at like the films that were nominated for best picture last year,
Hmm.
and for best actors or what have you. A lot of these are coming from smaller films,
Yeah.
and it's just sort of like, well, why not? Again, this is a film that surprised folks. Sinners is a film that surprised folks. It's just sort of like last year, where you have a flick like The Substance, where you have other flicks that just sort of like came under the radar
Yeah,
and gave us all
Honora.
something
Yeah.
different.
Hmm.
I mean, we should go back and talk about The Substance, another time. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's
I
that's
still haven't watched it yet, but I
okay.
definitely want to watch it.
Yeah, but that's another film where you sort of your expectations are subverted almost within like the first 15 minutes of the film. And this is where it's also a flick where sound design uh plays like a key role in terms of giving you tension, giving you a
Right.
bit of disgust, things like that. But
Right.
again, but I digress. Going back to going back to Sinners, yeah, I think that there are going to be a lot of people, and they're going to be in a lot of the technical, and then also in the performance categories that are going to have to be looked at, in
Yes,
regards to
exactly.
how this movie is carried, and come award season. So,
Right.
this is good. And I would also say, you know, I also think this is a film that does not need a sequel.
No.
It does not need. I don't think it needs a prequel.
No, the for me the only prequel you could possibly touch on are the Choctaw natives.
Okay.
That's it. That's
Mm,
it. You could maybe do a story with them. Other than that, I really don't want to see anything else except for
mm,
maybe what happened to Lisa.
right.
Where's Lisa? Lisa,
Mm,
we and I was hoping that mid credit stinger would address what happened to Lisa, that we would see Lisa show up somewhere, because I actually left the theater feeling bad for Lisa.
mm,
I was like
right.
I was like, holy shit, Lisa's got nothing now.
Right. She's just got the store. She's
Yeah,
got the stores.
the stores.
Hmm.
So what is her
Hmm.
what's her result? And it kind of reminded me of I guess we shall say his name, Neil Gaiman. His story, the trouble with Susan,
Okay.
where he tries to come up with a ending for Susan Pavenzi from
Hmm.
the Chronicles of Narnia stories, because
Right.
Susan basically disappears from the stories. I think in the third book,
Hmm.
she has like one scene in the third book in one chapter, and that's it. She's just kind of like basically the two youngest siblings and their cousin Eustace. They're like, "Hey, we're going back to Narnia," or maybe it's the fourth book that she's in, and
Right.
they're like, "We're going back to Narnia," and she's like, oh Narnia, that place, oh, so that's so fun when we were young and played in Narnia. And
Right.
I need to find my pantyhose and my lipstick. I'm going out with friends tonight, and
Hmm.
she leaves, and that's the last you hear of
She doesn't.
Susan.
She doesn't.
And
Chuck
in the
Cunningham.
final book, when spoiler, everybody dies, they even bring back Peter, the oldest brother,
Hmm.
to basically, like, he dies with everyone else, and
Okay.
Susan's not there, and it's just
Right.
like, and for years people were like, "What happened to Susan?"
Hmm.
A little girl, even when C.S. Lewis had a radio show, a little girl called in and was like, "What happened to Susan?" And he's just
Hmm.
like, "Well, Susan just didn't go with them." So
Right.
then it was, and so
Mm.
Neil Gaiman wrote that story, "The Trouble with Susan," to
Okay.
show what happened to Susan
Yeah.
after all this time. And
Okay.
I was hoping that there would be a what happened to Lisa.
Hmm. That's a thought, because I also think about, and this is it's a bit much, but I think about Patsy from 12 Years a Slave, where you're just sort of like, okay, Solomon Northrop is free and he's home with his family, but because of everything that Patsy had been through, and that was still going to, you just was like, God, was there any release? Was there any type of, she was just basically just sort of like left there running after
Right.
the
Yeah.
running after the wagon. So, but I definitely get it, and again, you've got characters in the periphery, um, that if you are, I'm not necessarily saying if you're paying attention, yeah, you definitely want to see what happens to them.
Right. Right.
But by the same token, I think that this film, and I think some people have even talked about this online as well, where it's just sort of like, no, we don't need a sequel. It's like, but what you could do is that you could do graphic novels. You could do, Remic's story could be a graphic novel,
Right. Exactly.
or it could be a standalone. It could be a book, or something along those lines, or,
Yeah.
or so. Yeah, I think that's a good place for folks to put it, because having like a Sinners 2,
Yeah,
you know,
no, no,
or just no,
no,
it just
no, thank you.
it loses it. It loses that. And you know, and you don't know, but you know, Warner Brothers could try and push it, but I think if they were smart, and especially after they lost Christopher Nolan to Universal,
Hmm.
I think it may be just one was like, yeah, you just don't, you just
Yeah, you just don't. You
unless
just
it's a
don't.
tremendous idea, it's like no, there is no, you know, you can't put a number after Sinners.
Right, exactly. No, no. And it's funny you mentioned Christopher Nolan because he was in the special thanks in the end
Yeah, I saw
credits
that. I
because
saw that.
he basically Coogler had him on speed dial on when he was using the IMAX cameras, and
Hmm.
Christopher Nolan was giving him a lot of advice on on how to use those cameras and like when's a good time to use those cameras. So he gave Christopher Nolan his due in that, which was cool.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And again, I'm now that this is sort of in the can and I've seen it, and eventually, you know, my aim is to see it again in IMAX. I'm actually interested to see what Ryan Coogler does next. Who knows? Will it be a third Black Panther film?
Mm.
Which I understand is in development.
Yeah,
But I'm really also eager to see what he does, because this is what we're looking at with him and Michael B. Jordan. It's a Scorsese De Niro thing.
yeah.
Uh,
Scorsese, De Niro, Scorsese,
DiCaprio.
DiCaprio as well.
So you know, I'm eager to see what they do, and again, if they're coming out with original works, you know, then this could be, you know, this will be a duo that you keep an eye on for, you know, for the next decade
Yeah, exactly,
or two.
exactly.
You know, I had heard that Michael B. Jordan is there's going to be, I don't know whether it's going to be a remake of the Thomas Crown Affair. Um, but I saw that in some of the trades that was going to be, you know, something that was going to be up next. Now, given the Steve McQueen version and the Pierce Brosnan version, it's like, okay, what would the twist on this be, or how would they
Right,
actually, you know,
right.
what would they, you know, what would be stolen? There is a part of me that is sort of like, okay, you know what? Why are we even going this route? Why not have Michael B. Jordan as someone trying to find like Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo? Because that was something with the two of them. And I know that this is something they have been developing. They were going to do a version of was it Tokapi? They were going to call it the Tokapi Affair, based on the film that was done back in the '60s with Peter Ustinov, another
Right,
heist film.
right,
But having, you know, using the Thomas Crown character and the Catherine character as well. You know, they're just, you know, they're still on they've left the United States, but it's still just sort of like, okay, what can we steal?
right.
Have him, like, you know, pursue them or something like that, or you know, whatever. But I always felt it's just okay. Do we really need a third remake
Yeah, of
of
that,
this?
exactly,
You know,
exactly.
and how many bored like rich people, you know, want to
Right,
turn to sort of like stealing it?
exactly.
Just,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
don't know. I just get the idea that Coogler is not even like interested in doing a sequel right now, especially now that this movie is done well it's from an original idea of his.
Hmm.
I don't see him being all that interested just yet in doing another sequel. I
Right.
know with the success of this, he will get tons of money thrown at him, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
But
But
you know,
I did want to talk a little bit more about
mhm.
Delroy Lindo
Sure.
because even though he was almost well, everybody had funny moments in this movie.
Yeah,
Almost
Omar
everybody.
Miller was good.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but the flip side of that is when they're driving Delroy Lindo from the train station to the juke joint. And that
Hmm.
story he tells about the guys he knew on that chain gang and how the leader of that, they were a group of musicians, and how the leader basically ends up getting lynched. that scene is so powerful done through him because I don't know about you, but I was seeing it, what he
As
was
he was
saying,
telling it,
as
yeah.
he was telling it, and I was
Mm-hmm.
seeing it through his eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
again, not many actors have the ability to make you see what they went through their eyes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of like, okay, I'm watching this guy go through something. I was just like, no, I see what he's seen.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. And it,
Lindo, he's always great. So,
mm,
you know, you can't be surprised that he did something amazing here because he's always good, and
true.
he brought it.
Yeah, definitely. Um, again, I would say sort of like underrated, but nonetheless, it's I think the testament to all the work that he has been getting over the years, and
Hmm.
especially we used to watch we'd watch The Good Wife, and then The Good Fight,
Hmm.
when when it segued over to that series, and he was excellent in that. He and Audra McDonald and Christine Baranski and all of the everybody in there. This was, it was quality television,
Yeah, that was a
quality
great
network
cast.
television too.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Delroy is steady as he goes. If you think you're
Yeah,
being surprised by him, it's just no. It's
it's
just
like
he's
no,
always had it in him over the years.
always, always. I
Hmm.
mean, he
Yeah.
just nails it. And I know we talked a little bit about Jack O'Connell as the vampire Remick, but
Mm,
he was amazing in this. And I think not that I don't think he's an underrated actor. I think he's um unsung at this moment because I saw him in Undefeated, the movie he made for Angelina Jolie, that film that she directed.
hmm.
I really liked that film, and I thought he was excellent in that film.
Okay.
And yeah, he's working steadily. But when I saw him as Remick, I was like, yes, there's that guy
Hmm.
from Undefeated. There's that
Okay.
guy, and yeah, he needs his flowers too because he was
Hmm.
amazing in this.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely is
He's
you
having
know
fun, but he's not hamming it up.
no, there's no scenery for him to chew.
No, no, mm-mm.
No, you didn't need you don't need a Javier Bardem in Skyfall, in the third act where it's where everything is just over emoted and just over expressive.
Mm-hmm.
No, you
Mm-hmm.
need someone to be consistently just sort of, you want to see what he's longing for. You want to see why he wants these people to, to quote unquote join him,
Right,
and
exactly. Hey, and it's the I think this was the most compelling version of do you want to be a vampire or not I've ever seen in a film. You know,
hmm.
all other films it's like, no, I don't want to be a vampire. Get away from me. And this
Right.
it started like, hmm.
Yeah. All your friends. It's like, hey, all your friends are here.
Yeah, all your friends are
All
here.
your friends are here. We're all this is collective. This is almost like Jim Jones.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know.
They like before. I said that they don't really, change much of the vampire lore in it. They play up the invitation, having to invite a vampire in. They did that very well and almost comically well, and but sort of the vampire style and the vampire aesthetic, the
Hmm.
whole concept of them possibly being like a hive mind
Right.
to vampires that I'd never seen before.
Okay.
If it's been done before, I've never seen it. But
Hmm.
yeah, that was new to me, and
Okay.
I was there for it. I enjoyed that sort of mindset. It was, and he's just like, I'm offering you freedom. I'm offering you equality.
Yes. Hmm.
It's like, but yeah, but you give up your humanity and
Your mortal coil.
your yeah, exactly, and your mortal coil and your individuality basically
Hmm.
for it. And I thought that that was really well done.
Yeah, I thought so too. Um, yeah, I think that again, I think we've touched on all the points. I think it's just now, once we post this, and folks watch, if you've been on the fence about this film, or do you think that it's whether it's overhyped or what have you. We hope that we've given you enough good reasons for you to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's again, it's a rated R film. It's vampires,
Mm-hmm.
but nonetheless, I
Gets
feel it's
gory.
yeah, it's good. Well, that was one thing, and I won't touch on it. It's just like, okay, this blood doesn't necessarily look red. It
Yeah.
looks a bit brownish,
Yeah.
and I think that was probably just sort of, your take on, well, maybe we just have to tone this down.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
maybe you can get some crimson on the like the lips and on the teeth, but
Right.
everything else,
Right. It wasn't bright red. It was very,
no.
very dark red.
Right, right. So, but yeah, overall, I think that this is it's a good film. I think it's a must see. I
Yes, I
think
agree.
that I think it gives the audience, even newcomers into this type of genre, it gives them something that they can call their own.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's given you a lot more than what you can expect from the horror genre. I think there's a bit more layers. There's a ton of world building in here,
Yes. Yes.
and then also providing you with a bit of history as well,
Yeah, a lot
in
of
terms
great
of
history.
culture.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the having the Chinese community basically caught in the middle of the white community and the black community. That was
Right.
a thing in the Mississippi Delta in the 30s.
Hmm. So, again, this is also something that Coogler has researched. I think they did their work on this.
Yeah.
This wasn't just sort of like, okay, you know what, we go, we're gonna film this. We're gonna film this in Georgia. We're gonna shoot some stuff in the swamps. We're gonna find some cotton fields, and everything else is just gonna be done on sound stages in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
No, they
No.
really put the time and the effort into this in order to provide it with some depth, to provide it with, again, you're giving yourself rich culture, rich history, and I think this is something that folks should, you should see probably like multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in as much as sort of how people flock to Inception, and you're dealing with sort of like concepts that were a bit foreign, or a bit some things that you just weren't used to. Just like with Inception, I think with this, you've got something similar, but but you're dealing with things that are a lot more cultural
Mm-hmm.
than, as opposed to, obviously just sort of like dreams and layers and things like that. A sci-fi premise. I think that you've got folks now who are, whether it's Peele, Coogler, Nolan, etc. You've got folks out there now who are looking at various genres and just sort of like, okay, I know how I can add to this.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And
And
so,
and and genre bending it's a good idea. It's a
hmm
very much a good idea. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself with ideas. You
no,
want to be able to grab different things from the coloring box.
definitely.
Make Give yourself a nice milieu to put there on the screen.
Hmm. And if you need anything else to sort of like, you know, put you over the top, I sat through, and I'm sure you did the same thing, where I sat through 25 minutes of trailers,
Yes.
and a good number of them were for sequels,
Yep.
for remakes. I know what you did last summer, continuations with like Final Destination. Granted, these are films that are in sort of like the horror genre, but again, we're dealing with we're dealing with Roman numerals after,
Right.
after
Exactly.
titles. We're dealing with like remakes
Hmm.
or reimaginings and things like that. It's just sort of like, okay, no, what you paid to see is an original work,
Right,
you know.
exactly. And if
So,
you're a person complaining about there's no original movies out there, well,
mhm,
this is the movie for you.
yeah, put up or shut up.
Yep,
Yep. So
exactly.
that's good. All right, so I think we'll end it here. Um, Once again, we will be here, and we will be back to reviewing more stuff. I think, now again, we're now at the sort of like summer film point in time where the calendar is going to be crowded, and there are going to be a lot of things that are out. Some will be sequels, some will be original works, and we will be back, as often as we can, to
Yes.
tell you what works, what doesn't, and what's worth checking out. So, in the meantime and in between time, and until the next time, I'm Stanley Tatum,
And I'm Zeke Springer, Zeke the Freak.
and we will see you again. Thank you for your time and take care.
Peace, people.
Peace
Until
out.
next time.